Hello YouTube, this is Derek or Lincoln 101. Welcome back to my channel, and this video is going to be the second installment in my Kygreum campaign videos. This video is going to be about a little more in depth with the race wars, as requested by 23 Penguins 32 Brady. So first things first, hopefully it shows up. It's only a pencil sketch. It's a nice little look at what was the kingdoms, divided all up. Political map if you want. I don't know how well that will show up. Hopefully it shows up as good as I hope. If not, I'll also give you a peek at this. This is the latest draft of the Kygreum world map. There. Give you guys a quick look at that. Give you your first taste of the world map. So, the race wars. The race wars began in the year 3411 and ended in the year 5636. Now if you think about it, and you calculate it out, that's 2,225 years of war. On again, off again, between all of the races. In this particular time period, each one of the races had a complete and almost utter hatred of all the other ones. So it's complete racism from every side, and it's almost constant war with only small breaks, guard ceasefires by each side for certain holidays or practices, etc. The race wars are a time period that I've left almost empty of significant dates for the purpose of perhaps running a campaign in them, given that it is 2,000 years, and what happened in these 2,000 years of war. There are two dates of extreme importance, three if you count one. That starts something else that I've mentioned in the timeline, which is the succession and establishment of the Shadowlands, which is where the races that are considered shadow or evil, demonic, and dark were, in a sense, not necessarily exiled, but they withdrew from the rest of the continent. These races being vampires, half-vampire, tiefling, and Shadar Kai. So these races were the ones that were hated by all the other races out of fear, and they retreated into the northwest and established their own kingdom, if you will. And the next event happened in the year 4316, which is the Battle of the Ardurian Plains, which were renamed the Plains of the Fallen. Ardurian is a word meaning burning, and what it was it's a large field of grassland that always looked like it was, as the sun set and rose, it looked like the field was on fire. At the year 4316, all of the races, except for those that retreated into the Shadowlands, met on the Ardurian Plains in a massive, massive battle. Devastated all sides, losses numbering in the hundreds of thousands for both sides, that were so catastrophic that the fields were so stained heavily with blood that bodies were mounted so high, the carrion birds were so stuffed they couldn't eat anymore. Just such a devastating loss for everyone on all sides that a ceasefire was called to actually remove the bodies. And that's why the field became named the Field of the Fallen, or the Plains of the Fallen. And the race wars, for me, as a DM, in the timeline really creates this really dark center in history that I wanted to have as a moment where everything was different, separated, pragmatic, and fragmented. Because what would follow next is where I started my first campaign, which would be this eventual, almost forced union between the races. And I felt it was an appropriate place to throw in a campaign and have players really want to have a way, a want, a drive, and a need to bring everything back together. But staying with the race wars for the moment, the race wars is a time filled with lots of heroes of legend and myth, and on both good and bad, discoveries filled with items of magic power lost now due to the constant struggle and strife. And those are the weapons of legacy. And each one of those items is some great magical artifact. And what that does is provides another hook for a possible campaign in the past. I might take a page from 23 Penguins. Brady, I might take a page from your book and maybe try some solo campaigns and send players back in time to the events of the race wars and kind of get a feel for that era for the players to see what life was like, and maybe try to find some of these weapons that were used. But basically what the race wars for me was like I said, is this really dark moment. I wanted my history to have almost an age that people didn't want to talk about in the future. It would be an era so dark, so unspeakable, that the future generations would look back with almost disgust at what their ancestors had been capable of doing to one another. So much friction between all of the races that now, in the present time, is not seen. The races are united. There is a council of races that is above all of the other kings and queens of the races. The kings and queens answer to them, answer to this council. So it keeps everything in check, and it's a nice balance of almost of perfect peace, if you will. So it was this really dark moment that I wanted to have the race wars, and something that could be whispered in hushed tones about this era of darkness. So having the race wars in the timeline is really important, as it also sets up, like, I'm going to try to show this once again. It's the political areas. Let's see if I can get close enough on some of this. Yeah, just a little bit of where everyone used to be set up. All the races used to live originally and be in strict isolation. And what this does from a creation level for me is really have areas that are really have this elven feel, or this dwarven feel, or orcish feel, that the buildings and structures all have this kind of old feeling to them, but at the same time, in the present, all the other races have moved in, built their own things, but it has this older feel to it. And I guess that would come for having traveled in Europe. In Europe, you get this feeling of old, of that you're walking on streets that have been walked on 1,000 times by people from long ago, and of different cultures and creeds. And it's just this feeling that each building is older and was used for a different purpose than what you're currently using it for. And that is something that I really wanted to bring to the forefront in my campaigns, is this feeling of oldness, of that while I may live in the Elven capital, or what was the Elven capital, as a human, I can still feel the Elven kingdom's might. I can feel its old worldness. I can feel that other presence, that here was this great, mighty Elven kingdom that was filled with all of this magic and combination of forestry and magic and all these other feelings. But I wanted that strong sense from all of the races. But I felt I couldn't get that if I said everything was at peace at first. So I created this really dark setting of the race wars, where this moment, this 2,000 years in history, where there was such division that everyone had his own unique personality, unique mindset, that would allow for an eventual unity that would still have remnants of something from the past. This has been a small look into the race wars during the Kygreum timeline from the year 3411 to the year 5636. Hope you have enjoyed this quick glimpse into the darkness that was the race wars.